Goder habel choren, ochon karchensach. Chundan ortel gamen chelchen, handar godia.
For over a year, amidst the rugged expanse of the Burkhan Kaldun Mountains, they rested and regained their strength. The warriors of the burgeoning nation grew powerful and resolute, their ranks swelling with valiant fighters drawn from all directions. Lady Holand, seeing that Temujin had reached the age of 17, decided it was time to arrange his marriage. After consulting with the others, she sent Munlik and Chulu with a ceremonial 9x9 betrothal gift to meet with Day Sechin to settle upon the date for the joyous occasion. This was the appointed day, a day long awaited. Clad in flowing robes, the chieftains raised their cups high above their heads. Following the path of the sun and moon, they turned in a full circle, pouring the sacred drink upon the backs of their steeds, upon the open roads that stretched endlessly before them. Bidding farewell to his mother, Temujin carved a path through the grasslands, urging his horse forward with swift strokes of the whip. He crossed the Caroline River, the vast expanse stretching before him. Temujin stood before the Taisiyin, observing the customs and rituals of the time with reverence, as the ancient wedding ceremony commenced. Amidst the undulating, jubilant voices of blessings, the gathered ministers encircled Temujin and his bride, guiding them as they bowed in reverence to the heavenly deities. Taizu, holding his daughter's hand, spoke with solemnity, "In the achievements of the world, women bear half the merit. You must take good care of your husband." With tears in her eyes, Borte nodded in agreement, her resolve unwavering. Temujin and his wife rode at the forefront in a splendid, ornate carriage, leading the way. Behind them, in a grand and winding procession, Tazian led 999 tribal guests, accompanying the bridal entourage as they set forth toward the land of the Borjigin. At this moment, the Khan of the Kerait tribe, along with other tribal leaders and allies of Yasutia the Brave, had also arrived in the land of the Mongols to offer their congratulations and partake in the joyous celebration. Zarkigulin of the Ilyang tribe arrived with his son, Zalma, to offer their congratulations. In accordance with the promise once made by Ogdi Khan's consort, Zalma was accepted as an attendant to the young master. At this moment, the wedding entourage arrived. Lady Tora Jane, the wife of Ogdi Khan, quickly rose to greet them. After exchanging ceremonial toasts with the matchmaker, she received her daughter-in-law's respectful bows. At the grand wedding feast, the wine flowed like an endless sea, and the meat was piled as high as mountains. Waukelan gazed upon his son's imposing and majestic demeanor, like a treasured sword newly tempered by fire. Her heart burned with an uncontainable desire to unleash him like an arrow. At this moment, Temujin supported Borte Garibakjan and approached the Khan, saying, "Though the Kintiai mountains are near, they rise like a path suspended in the heavens, difficult to ascend. Though the great Khan is far, his shadow rests within my heart. In honor of the friendship shared with my late father, I humbly offer this black sable for a war robe." The Khan took the gift, dipped his fingers into the wine, and flicked it toward the sun, then toward the sacred Burkhan Kaldun mountain. Turning to Temujin, he declared, "The repayment for the sable coat shall be to help you gather your scattered people, so that you may reclaim the position of Yasuji Batar." At the grand banquet, where heroes gathered to revel in drink and laughter, Temujin's keen eyes fell upon a boy of merely 13 or 14 years. The lad possessed an eloquence so commanding that it overshadowed all others. Deeply impressed, Temujin resolved to keep the boy by his side as a close attendant, bestowing upon him the name Yudasujin. Jurkin of the Basa clan, the man who had once slain Temujin's blood-red horse in an act of enmity, now arrived to offer his congratulations. Temujin, harboring no grudge for past transgressions, received him with courtesy and respect. The people were indulging in drink and revelry when, all of a sudden, the sounds of shouting and commotion erupted from outside. Temujin sent someone to investigate what was happening. Before long, the messengers returned with their report. It was none other than Sorkin Shira of the Naaman tribe, a descendant of the treacherous Teichiud, who, in a drunken frenzy, had caused chaos and grievously injured Temujin's younger brother, Belgudii. Sachimbu, sensing the dire turn of events, quickly fled with his companions. Under the orders of Temujin, Chulu was dispatched, leading a force of 500 soldiers in relentless pursuit. But Belegiga, foreseeing an imminent and ferocious clash, leaned on the support of his attendants and, despite his injuries, sought an audience with Temujin. With earnest resolve, he urged Temujin to refrain from mobilizing forces over a mere wound inflicted upon him. Such an act, he cautioned, would fail to win the hearts and loyalty of the people. Temujin and his followers, upon hearing the words of Buku Bailagudai, were overcome with astonishment and admiration. As Temujin comforted his wounded brother, he simultaneously issued the command to withdraw the troops. In the following 1 or 2 years, the warriors of the Kentai nation honed their skills in battle and martial arts, growing into a formidable force. Temujin's reputation soared to unprecedented heights. One day, a Genghis, the eldest son of Taishikin, the leader of the Hongirja clan, came to pay homage to Temujin. He reported that the Semomo clan, in collusion with the Lukagud and Tatar clans, had mobilized an army of 30,000 soldiers to invade the land of the Jitai. The enemy forces advanced with ferocious momentum, their soldiers well-trained and their numbers vastly surpassing those of the Begter nation. Faced with this formidable adversary, Temujin remained remarkably calm. Together with Mukali, he devised a brilliant strategy to repel the invaders, overcoming the many with the few. Temujin himself personally inspected the troops and horses, meticulously selecting over 13,000 robust warriors. He divided them into 13 smaller units, appointing leaders for each. 3 days later, an invading force of 30,000 enemy troops arrived and set up camp on the opposite bank of the Kerait River, their arrogance blazing like an unyielding flame. Temujin sat astride his horse atop the high ridge, his piercing gaze fixed across the river where the enemy forces assembled. Their morale was unshaken, their formations imposing, a display of discipline and strength that stirred a quiet admiration within him. Temujin returned to the grand encampment and immediately issued an order for the entire army to retreat 25 li under the cover of night and set up camp anew. The assembled generals, perplexed by Temujin's intentions, withdrew as commanded, all the while speculating on the reasoning behind this sudden maneuver. Torjin Shira, Ko Morjin, and others, upon seeing the young and seemingly inexperienced Mao Haolai appointed as the military strategist to command the entire army, felt a surge of dissatisfaction. Then, Manuelai summoned Bugula, Chulu, and Jabu to his side, commanding each of them to lead 1,000 troops across the river in secret and lie in ambush. Their orders were clear. When the enemy began their retreat, they were to intercept them and engage in a fierce slaughter. Bugurla, Chulu, and Jabu, under the command of the military strategist, each led their own troops, stealthily taking a detour and hastening toward the far bank of the Kerait River. Torjin Shara and Ko Morjin, already somewhat fearful of the enemy due to their lack of troops, grew even more unsettled when they saw Mahaolai redirecting 3,000 soldiers elsewhere. Driven by their unease, they marched straight to Mahaolai's tent to demand an explanation. Mao Hao spoke with confidence, saying, "I have my own strategy to repel the enemy. Rest assured, esteemed generals." Taljin Shila and Ko Morjin, however, were left puzzled and unconvinced. Temujin, upon learning of Mao Haolai's strategic deployment of troops, was overjoyed. He murmured to himself with quiet resolve, "Heaven has sent such a capable man to aid me. What have I to fear?" The armies of the Tatar and 2 other tribes pursued relentlessly for 25 miles, arriving before the encampment of the Begter nation, hurling insults and provocations with thunderous voices. Yet the soldiers of the Begter nation, under the command of their strategist Mao Haolai, stood firm, resolute in their orders. The warriors of the 3 Tatar tribes, seeing the soldiers of the Begter nation retreat without even engaging in battle, sent forth their vanguard led by Orjigula and Tadasala to cross the river in pursuit. Mao Hao traversed the military camps, inspecting each with a keen eye. He ensured that every soldier was well-fed, well-hydrated, and adequately rested, preparing them to seize the opportune moment for battle. At the hour before dawn, when the enemy soldiers, weary from their exhausted horses, were caught unprepared, Mao Haolai led his forces in a sudden and ferocious assault. 10,000 arrows were unleashed in unison, raining death upon the opposing ranks. The enemy suffered heavy casualties, their morale shattered and their fighting spirit utterly crushed. The Tatar forces launched 3 assaults, each repelled by a relentless rain of arrows. From atop a large cart, Mao Haolai surveyed the battlefield. He saw the enemy ranks in disarray, their banners tattered and flailing in the wind. Sensing the moment of opportunity, he commanded the entire army to charge. The Tatar troops, along with their allies, suffered devastating losses. Over half their forces were killed or wounded. Temujin, amidst the chaos of his enemies, caught sight of Kalajin, the very traitor who had once betrayed him and fled. Fury ignited within him like a raging inferno. With fire in his eyes, he raised his spear and spurred his horse into a relentless pursuit. Mao Haolai led his forces in a triumphant pursuit, pressing relentlessly against the Tatar and allied troops. Unable to withstand the onslaught, the enemy scattered in disarray, leaving behind a field of corpses. They had just crossed halfway when, all of a sudden, the thunderous sound of gongs and drums erupted up and down the great river, accompanied by battle cries that roared like thunder. Bugalar, Chulu, and Jabu, each leading their 1,000-strong forces, charged forth with ferocious intensity. The warriors of the Tatar tribe, upon witnessing the sudden ambush of Letu's forces erupting forth, were struck with terror and disarray. Hastily they scrambled to meet the assault, but countless were slain, while many more perished, swallowed by the unforgiving waters of the river. At this moment, Temujin saw that Kulanjan had already crossed the river, and his heart burned with urgency. Just then, he caught sight of Kormogun galloping toward him. Wasting no time, he urgently commanded him to release an arrow and strike down Kulanjan. Ulajin, struck by an arrow, tumbled from his horse, only to be seized by the soldiers of the Boat estate from across the river, who surged forward and bound him tightly. Mumlik had just pushed Hulajin out the door when Udis Iron stepped into the yurt to report. Bugurji of the Arlet tribe had captured Tatamangla, the chieftain of the Saman tribe, alive and had already brought him to the front of the camp. The campaign to repel the incursions of the Tatars, Wukigun, and Salji tribes ended in a resounding victory. At the celebratory feast, Temujin and his assembled civil and military officials repeatedly raised their cups in honor of Mao Haulak. His wisdom and strategic brilliance had earned the admiration of all. At the last wedding feast, the descendant of thieves from the Kongarat tribe, Sorkin Shira, who had wounded others in a drunken rampage before fleeing, now found himself compelled by the awe-inspiring renown and merciful spirit of Temujin. Temujin, with a resolute smile, declared, "If one does not rid themselves of wicked thoughts, mere sweet words are of no use." With these words, he commanded his men to return Begter, along with the mother and wife he had abandoned in his flight years ago, back to him. In less than a year, more than 10 tribes, including the Jaysir, Kitgon, and Hargai, pledged their allegiance to the burgeoning Borjigin state. Temujin bestowed fine steeds and garments upon those who pledged their allegiance to him. The recipients, overwhelmed with gratitude, spread the word far and wide, proclaiming that Temujin was the true son of heaven,